Business Finland is the most important public funding agency for research funding in Finland and is directed by the Finnish Ministry of Environment and Economy. According to the agency, its purpose is to promote the competitiveness of Finnish industry and service sector by assisting in the creation of world-class technology and technological know-how. Business Finland functions as a funding agency for research and technology development. Receivers of the funding are universities, polytechnics, research institutes such as VTT, Technical Research Centre of Finland, the European Space Agency, startups, small and medium-sized companies, large corporations and public bodies. In enterprise projects, funding is given to transform research stage ideas into other businesses and may combine direct unconditional funding with guaranteed loans, conditional on success of the certain business. So I think that last sentence explains something that is very useful to us, and I'm sure that you will benefit from this presentation. So let me now invite Dr. Lanka.
Thanks for having me. And first thing I noticed is that you put this speaking stand for skinny people here for me. You have the speaking stand for Americans there. Thank you for not putting that for me. I will talk about Finland in a not very structured way. I give you bits and pieces of Finland, what we have done, what we are currently doing, and please kind of think then what we could do together. Few words about me. I used to have a real job before joining the Finnish government. As Professor mentioned, my educational background is that I have a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences. I actually patented my innovations from my PhD studies, formed a company around that, sold the technology to Archimedes Pharma, I think 15 years ago. I have set up 5 startups. I have invested in startups. I have been advising in the best health tech or pharma accelerator. One of the most unique tasks I actually had was that I was advising Russian government when they were establishing Skolkovo, which is next to Russia, which they are trying to make like a Silicon Valley of Russia. So I pretty much helped them to create the bio and medical accelerators and startup activities there. So I have like a startup heart. I have a science heart, I have an entrepreneurial heart. Unfortunately, when I joined the Finnish government 2.5 years ago, they don't allow us to have any shares of startups, any ownership of startup companies. So I have to divest all of my startup company shares. But again, very happy to be here, and let's start. These are some of the most renowned Finnish companies that you might be also familiar with. I just wanted to let you know that not many people actually know that, for example, Linux is a Finnish innovation. Of course, in the gaming we are very big, Supercell and Rovio as well. But the basics about Finland: we are somewhat large country in size, but very small in population. We always say that we have 5.5 million people, not 5 million, but 5.5 million people. That's very important for us to say. Part of the Eurozone, part of the EU. We have 2 official languages, Finnish and Swedish. 2 years ago we celebrated our 100 years anniversary of our independence. We have 500,000 summer cottages, summer houses, 200,000 lakes, 3 million saunas, meaning that every single Finnish family has more than one sauna. We usually have a summer house with a sauna, and even in a one-bedroom apartment in Helsinki, there's usually sauna. 40 national parks and one and the only Santa Claus. If somebody tries to own Santa Claus, they are lying. We have the Santa Claus. Finland can be divided into 4 different regions. So on the top we have Lapland, where the Santa Claus lives, where we have the northern lights. Then Lakeland area is here on the eastern side, 200,000 lakes, very beautiful. Then we have Helsinki, the capital region, where most of the activities is happening. And then we have the most unique coastal archipelago area in our west coast. 4 different regions, and we have also 4 different seasons. So the lake where you can swim during the summer, you can ski during the winter because it's frozen. Few words about the organization, the very unique organization that I'm representing Business Finland. We are doing 4 things. What other countries also have is that very traditional trade and investment council. So we are like that for the Finnish government. So it's our role to help Finnish companies to come to international markets. We advise them. It's our role to attract foreign direct investments to Finland. That's second one. Nothing special about that. But what makes us very special is that we are also the funding agency for research and innovations for Finland. So every year we inject about 600 million euros to the Finnish innovation ecosystem. And our funding is grants or loans. So in a way we fund, but by funding the Finnish innovation ecosystem, we also are very important player in the policy making of innovations in Finland. Fourth thing that we actually do is that we also manage the Finnish tourism board called Visit Finland. So we do export promotion, invest in activities, tourism and innovation funding. On the pictures on the left, so we see that it's our role to help Finnish companies to grow in international markets, but also it's our role to create very unique ecosystems to Finland that I will talk about next. There are dozens of agencies that rank countries based on different things. Finland usually comes on top when you talk about how innovative a country is, what is the availability or adoption to latest technologies, what is the availability of scientists and engineers, and of course our education system is usually ranked as number 1 in the world. I will show you a video which is not actually science fiction. It's 4 minutes where we have kind of put together things that we are already working on in Finland. As mentioned, this is not science fiction. All of these we already are working on the ground, and this is a very innovative system for the sound. Now. it took us long time to get here, and it hasn't been very easy actually for Finland. If I talk about history a bit, so Finland was completely broke after the war with Russia, mid-40s. So it took us a long time to kind of build the country, and then I think late 70s, early 80s, we made a decision to start very heavily investing into engineering education. And that eventually kind of was the reason why Nokia became so big in Finland. And actually in the Western world there hasn't been a single company that had that big effect on GDP as Nokia had for Finland. Early 90s we were in trouble with very bad currency policy. So actually early 90s we were like 5 minutes away from being the first Western country to go bankrupt. But we didn't kind of stop activities, we continued to invest in education, in engineering education. Another crisis when Apple killed Nokia mobile phones, when iPhone killed Nokia mobile phones, Nokia became too arrogant. And suddenly, 10 years ago, Finland was in huge trouble because country was full of unemployed Nokia engineers. Tens of thousands of unemployed former Nokia engineers. Now looking back, that was again the best thing that ever happened to Finland, because those former Nokia engineers had to go and work in SMEs, or they had to set up their own companies. In many different industry areas, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's fintech, whether it's health, whether it's even automotive. So 10 years ago, whole Finland was standing in one big Nokia leg. Well, we had pulp and paper industry, but mostly it was Nokia. And now we have diversified. And now we are in the situation that those thousands of SMEs are now starting to export, bringing tax money back to Finland. So it hasn't been easy for us. We are not Sweden, where there's a lot of old money, and Sweden has not ever been in a war. We are not Norway with natural resources. We have had to work hard. I mentioned ecosystems. This is something that we are supporting in many different sectors. And these are a few examples of ecosystems which we are supporting, but the companies are driving. We are funding it, supporting it, changing possibly even the legislation in Finland, making the legislation enabling. Few examples of ecosystems where we are using or we are deploying in digitalization. To mention few, for example, smart buildings. In the video there was a lot of things on smart buildings. KONE has the lead there. KONE is the most innovative elevator and escalator company headquartered in Finland. In energy, in traffic, whether it's land or our sea area, very cool example of the big investments coming to Finland is that Rolls-Royce set up a huge R&D site to Finland. Video, which is not actually science fiction. It's 4 minutes, where we have kind of put together things that we are already working on in Finland. As mentioned, this is not science fiction. All of these we already are working on the ground, and this is a very innovative system for the sound. Now. it took us long time to get here, and it hasn't been very easy actually for Finland. If I talk about history a bit, so Finland was completely broke after the war with Russia, mid-40s. So it took us long time to kind of build the country, and then I think late 70s, early 80s, we made a decision to start very heavily investing into engineering education. And that eventually kind of was the reason why Nokia became so big in Finland. And actually in the Western world there hasn't been a single company that had that big effect on GDP as Nokia had for Finland. Early 90s we were in trouble with very bad currency policy. So actually early 90s we were like 5 minutes away from being the first Western country to go bankrupt. But we didn't kind of stop activities, we continued to invest in education, in engineering education. Another crisis when Apple killed Nokia mobile phones, when iPhone killed Nokia mobile phones, Nokia became too arrogant. And suddenly, 10 years ago, Finland was in huge trouble because country was full of unemployed Nokia engineers. Tens of thousands of unemployed former Nokia engineers. Now looking back, that was again the best thing that ever happened to Finland, because those former Nokia engineers had to go and work in SMEs, or they had to set up their own companies. In many different industry areas, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's fintech, whether it's health, whether it's even automotive. So 10 years ago, whole Finland was standing in one big Nokia leg. Well, we had pulp and paper industry, but mostly it was Nokia. And now we have diversified. And now we are in the situation that those thousands of SMEs are now starting to export, bringing tax money back to Finland. So it hasn't been easy for us. We are not Sweden, where there's a lot of old money, and Sweden has not ever been in a war. We are not Norway with natural resources. We have had to work hard. I mentioned ecosystems. This is something that we are supporting in many different sectors. And these are a few examples of ecosystems which we are supporting, but the companies are driving. We are funding it, supporting it, changing possibly even the legislation in Finland, making the legislation enabling. Few examples of ecosystems where we are using or we are deploying in digitalization. To mention few, for example, smart buildings. In the video there was a lot of things on smart buildings. Kone has the lead there. Kone is the most innovative elevator and escalator company headquartered in Finland. In energy, in traffic, whether it's land or our sea area, very cool example of the big investments coming to Finland is that Rolls-Royce set up a huge R&D site to Finland where they study autonomous vessels. So not only our land area is used for autonomous car research, but also our sea area is used for autonomous vessel research. Another thing, AI for health. IBM Watson, IBM's artificial intelligence platform, so the healthcare related R&D is focused in Finland now. So there's many things happening, but companies are driving this and we are supporting. The areas: manufacturing, retail, transportation, as I mentioned, in land and sea area, finance, health, energy, maritime, education. If I highlight few things, artificial intelligence is something that is very strong in Finland. Connectivity 5G, of course. Gaming, very strong in Finland. Cybersecurity, also very strong in Finland. I took an example of our gaming industry just to show you that it takes time to build an ecosystem. So everybody's saying that the gaming industry in Finland, the gaming ecosystem is one of the best in the world, but it took us time to build that. Starting from 80s, where we started to build the first games. 85, the first international games were released. 95, the first companies that are still present were established, and we tried to do started to do mobile games late 90s. Angry Birds came right after iPhone and App Store was launched. Do you know how many games Rovio, which is the company that made Angry Birds, made before Angry Birds? Take a guess. I think Angry Birds was their 51st game. So for years and years they were struggling and they were out of money, and then finally their 51st game, Angry Birds, was a hit. And after that things have started booming, so of course you know Supercell with Clash of Clans and Heyday and these, they were first acquired partly by Japanese and then acquired partly by Chinese. And now we are seeing an invasion of Finnish gaming companies who are going public. So for the last 2 or 3 years ago, whether they are going public in Helsinki or in New York. But what I want to say with these 2 slides is that it just takes time. There are some students here, I think, be patient. It just takes time. What I'm very happy about Finland is that I think that we are our cooperation with different partners in the country is the best in the world. So in Finland, for example, this is the smart finance ecosystem. So in Finland, banks, regulators, government, venture capitalists, fintech companies, accelerators, different networking players, universities, and then different event organizations truly work together. We truly work together. This slide is here to show that we have defined our industries extremely precisely. This is example of fintech, the excellent Finnish fintech companies. I think this was done February this year, so I think now we have about 200 excellent fintech companies. And all of our industries are very well defined. So for example, in fintech, we have defined based on the actual thing that they are doing in fintech. So if you are keen on knowing about some industry area more, about the companies that are operating, about the university groups that are operating, we have these kind of pictures, these kind of charts regarding all of them. One of the cool things that we are working on, everybody's talking about 5G and 5G rollouts. We are starting to see that. We are already working on 6G. We as Business Finland, we allocated 250 million euros to this just last year. And actually in Finland we had the world's first 6G conference happening just before the summer. And we had participants from all the large companies, of course Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei, Samsung, Qualcomm, etc. From India there was a lot of interest, so we had representatives from Infosys and Wipro and Tech Mahindra and TCS. So this is something that we are working on already. To be honest, I have no idea what 6G is. I always ask these 6G professors that what is 6G? And they are telling me that this is something for 5G ends, then 6G starts. But nobody has been able to explain to me what exactly it is. But we are doing research on that. And if you are keen on jumping into that boat or that train, feel free to contact me. And the 6G community is very happy to take on new partners in academia as well. As mentioned, it took a long time for Finland to get in the position where we are. And what we have seen during the last couple of years, that this Finnish ecosystem, as mentioned, where startups, SMEs, large companies, academia, government work closely together, that has started to attract multinational companies to come to Finland to do R&D. So I actually mentioned a few examples. So IBM Watson Healthcare R&D in Finland. Google, actually, they have their largest data center outside US in Finland. They have invested 1 billion to Finland already, and they just disclosed before the summer that they are investing another billion to Finland for their data centers. They are operating their Northern European cloud, actually from Finland. Rolls-Royce, I mentioned, autonomous vessel R&D. GE Healthcare, they are basically doing two things in Finland. GE Healthcare, all the wireless R&D done in Finland. But now they also established a wearable technology R&D site to Finland. Zalando, which is the e-commerce giant in Europe, based in Germany, all their mobile and artificial intelligence R&D is in Finland. Indian companies are very seriously looking into Finland. Mahindra already has 3 investments. Infosys just acquired a company. I was telling to Kumudu when we drove here that we are hosting a delegation from the large Indian corporate houses or ICT companies pretty much every 2 weeks. So that is the beauty of doing things in Finland nowadays, that you have access to Scandinavian market, you have access to latest technologies, but you have also access to the large multinational companies which are doing R&D in Finland. What actually happened during last year is in the pharma sector alone, because we were changing our biobank legislation in a 2-way. First is that we changed our biobank legislation so that Finnish biobanks are the only biobanks where you can combine the full genomic data of a person to full medical history of a person. And in Finland we have excellent medical records. That is the reason that during the last year we have had all these large companies, Pfizer, GSK, MSD, the biotech companies, Astra, Sanofi, AbbVie, coming to Finland to set up R&D sites to dig in our very unique biobank material. Another cool thing that we are actually doing in Finland at the moment that we are in a process of launching a model where us, whose data is in the biobanks, we will get monetized for it. So when Pfizer is doing R&D in Finland using the data from me, I get monetized, which is actually quite cool. Business Finland, we put 20 million euros to this, and then we collected 5 or 10 million each from the large companies. So they have all invested to Finland as well. But everything starts here, universities. Our research ecosystem, as mentioned many times, where universities work together with government, work together with companies. VTT is the Finnish Governmental Research Institute. We collaborate very closely. Finland, we are a very strong player in EU. Actually, we are now the president of the EU. It's like the 6-month rotating presidency that we are actually looking after right now. And new government was formed in Finland actually just before the summer, and also in the new government's program, the wording that the R&D and science, the wording for that will continue to be very strong. I know you are working with Aalto University, or you are starting the collaboration with Aalto University. It's actually the right university that you have chosen. Congratulations on that. They have a very cool startup ecosystem, which is something that you could actually, I think you could learn, or you could do some collaboration. Depending on the year, they produce close to 100 new startups every year, the Aalto Entrepreneurial Society. Actually, almost half of the CEOs in the Finnish public companies come from Aalto University. There's a lot of patents being filed, so Aalto University is next to Nokia. Nokia has a huge patent portfolio. But Aalto University is kind of second entity in Finland regarding how many patents they file. And actually, most of the Finnish startups actually come from Aalto University. But there are other universities or research institutions as well. So this is just a slide showing that for example in deep learning it is not only Aalto, but Aalto University is working closely with University of Helsinki, who is working closely with Tampere University of Technology, University of Tampere, Oulu University, Jyväskylä University, Turku University, and with VTT. So the universities work together in Finland. Why we Finns are so innovative? Because we have had to be, as mentioned. No natural resources. We have had hard times. We have fought the war with Russia. We have been broke. Nokia collapsed. Nokia mobile phones collapsed. So we have had to be innovative. Somebody is saying because there's nothing else to do in Finland, because it's boring country and there's no sunlight and it's cold, so all you can do is work and be innovative. Startup culture, I think we started early 90s, but I remember when I was still studying in university late 90s, it was not cool to work in a startup. Now it's starting to be cool to work in a startup. World-class education, a strong commitment to innovation and R&D. R&D around 3% of GDP, it could be even more. But why we are so innovative? I think because we have had to be. Government is very supportive. We have a strategy on digital economy. We are enabling legislation. One of the reasons that we, for example, have the Rolls-Royce autonomous vessel R&D side is that because we changed our legislation in order to enable that. On biobanks, the reason why we have large pharma companies doing R&D in Finland, because we enabled the legislation. We changed it. The reason why we are already working on 6G, because why we have so many, for example, 5G environments already in Finland, because we enabled the legislation. We were the first country to come out with AI strategy, and as said, it's kind of cool to work in a startup still. One of the things I haven't mentioned yet is slush. Who has heard about slush? Okay. It should say the biggest startup event in the world, because slush nowadays is the biggest startup event in the world. It happens in Helsinki every November. Tickets are always sold out, so we sell only about 30,000 tickets. And last year we had 1,500 investors alone in Helsinki for slush. We have charter planes coming from the valley to slush, so everybody's there. It actually, the slush started with the crazy idea that one of my friends had, who actually also established Rovio and is the man behind the Angry Birds. 12 years ago he was sitting down with his friends and he was thinking that, hey, let's organize the biggest startup event in the world to Finland. Everybody's talking about Silicon Valley, but let's do the biggest startup event in the world in Finland. Okay, when should we do that? Let's do it in the worst possible time of the year. That's the name slush comes from this wet snow that we have in Helsinki that time. Weather is horrible, it's dark, we have the wet snow, but the idea is that nobody wants to see the sights or be outside. Everybody wants to be in the event venue. So 30,000 people, 1,500 investors, and slush is all about the side events that are happening in Helsinki. We have about 500 official side events happening that week in Helsinki, and nobody knows how many unofficial side events there are. Last year we had a delegation from India of 30 startups, and then NASCOM, which is the ICT Association of India, took I think 15 companies, so 45 Indian companies alone we had in Slush last year. But if you want to explore the coolest startup event in the world, you should come to Slush. I think it's 21st and 22nd of November this year. Kumudu, I think Slashcom has been talking about coming to Slush, right? Why I think that Finnish startups are doing well, first is that because the Finnish market is so small, so all the startup companies from day one they are born global, and then the government supports them very well with funding but also with advising, and as mentioned nowadays it's cool. Couple of more words about the startup scene still. Most of the startups are somewhat IT or ICT related, but during the last couple of years we have started to see that companies are developing more and more physical end products also to consumers. Finland is number one largest investor of early stage startups in Europe measured in venture cap. Even in the Finnish parliament we have a very active startup group. But this is actually very striking considering how small country we are, that during the last couple of years 10% of the global exits that when venture capitalists send eventually gets their money back and some returns, 10% come from Finland, from a small country of 5.5 million people. AI is very strong in our agenda. Also, the Finnish government is utilizing AI in many ways in society. This is something that if you are keen on knowing more about artificial intelligence, we have launched these elements of AI free online courses for the public with the aim to educate every single Finn regarding artificial intelligence. But these courses are in English, and I just saw the data that actually people from more than 100 countries have already participated these elements of AI courses. But our aim is to educate every single Finn regarding AI. Another very cool slide about startups. We are starting to seriously attract money to Finland as well. So these are the very early stage funding, almost seed fundings to startups. So these are the billion-dollar supercell deals, etc. The late stage funding do not show here. But starting from 2010 to 2018, it has so the amount of money pouring to early stage money pouring to Finnish startups has gone up almost 5 times. And there's more and more foreign venture cap coming to Finland. And remember, this is the very, very early stage funding. Another thing that we started actually end of last year is that we thought that we need to start attracting the best global startup teams to Finland. Why Finland? I have been telling about the reasons. Booming startup ecosystem, very high quality of life in Finland. Finland always ranks as number one when expats are around the world are being asked what is the quality of life. Outstanding funding opportunities and a lot of services. So we launched this startup permit, meaning that residence permit for startup entrepreneurs coming from outside EU or European Economic Area for max 2 years, which then can be extended. It's continuous application, no deadlines. You can find more instructions, very detailed instructions from our webpage, businessfinland.fi/English/startup permit. Process is very simple. You have to ask for kind of eligibility statement from Business Finland. We give it in 30 days. We go through the idea, go through the team, etc. And then we help the team to get the actual permit from the Finnish Immigration Service. and help with the company establishment. We launched this late last year, late 2018. I don't have the 2019 data so far, but very late 2018, with no marketing, we received a bit over 100 applications, and 1/3 then were positive and were given the startup permits. But I know for sure that this has been booming this year, so it's very interesting to see the numbers this year. How we then fund, how Business Finland funds the companies, few different ways. Basically, to all companies that are registered in Finland, we give this tempo funding, which is aimed for companies to explore the international markets. So let's say that the Sri Lankan team establishes a company in Finland. It can be fully owned, and it should be fully owned by the Sri Lankan entity, but as long as it's registered in Finland, it's eligible for this funding. So tempo funding, it's a 75% grant with maximum of 50,000 euros, which we give to company to explore the international markets. So when for the flight tickets, and if they want to buy, or when they want to buy or need to buy consulting services, kind of market entry consulting or legal services, this is something that we give to all the companies. Our R&D funding can be either loan. I think the interest nowadays is 1%, and the payback time is 20 years. It can be loan or grant, really depending on two things: whether the company is new, or whether the project is challenging. The younger the company, the more challenging the project, then we tend to give loans. We tend to give grants. The larger the company, the less challenging the project, then we tend to give loans. And there's no cap there. Largest R&D funding this year that is somewhat linked to India that we are looking after is for Fortum. Fortum is the big Finnish energy giant, and they have this huge biomass project in India, which we gave, I think, 14.4 million euros for the R&D. And then for the best and brightest companies, there's this very special young innovative company funding where the grants can be up to half a million euros. These soft issues and soft values, or values overall, are very important to us. I just read somewhere that in Finland, the Finnish dads spend most time with their children, by far the most time with their children in the world. And that's wonderful. So this is my second to last slide. So Finland is, besides being a very good place to set up your startup or do your R&D or to visit, it's an excellent place to raise your children, which is very important to us. Thank you. As mentioned, I didn't even try to make this a very structured presentation. I just wanted to give you some ideas what's happening in Finland, and I would be happy to answer to any questions now you may have or later. But any questions, any comments?
One question is, you mentioned that at one time when you want to switch from your startups to your government position, you had to give away your company shares.
Yeah.
So how did you handle the situation? How did you make your decision to give up your shares in your startups? You are in the best place in the world run startups. Now all of a sudden you have to give up your shares. How hard and was it?
Yes, so the question was that how hard was it personally to me to to kind of jump into startup world, to government,
Exactly.
and to sell all the assets that I have.
What was the rationale behind your decision?
That's a good question. A bit personal question, but I will tell you the personal answer. I had been working for maybe for the last 15 years, kind of like 24/7. My wife and my 3 children were always in Finland, and I was living in an airplane. And then me and my wife discussed that we want to take our children abroad to get them nice education outside Finland, although the Finnish education is good, but we want them to get exposed to other countries as well before they become teenagers. Because now we have 2 teenagers, but then our older were, I think, 11 and 12. So we wanted to take them abroad before they kind of say that, by the way, they are not going. And I had been, we were about to move to Switzerland, actually to kind of continue the pharma research in Basel, where Novartis and Roche are, and it's a very good place to do pharma. But then this opportunity became open to head Business Finland operations in India, and then I just asked my wife that, hey, there's this governmental position open in India. I've done a lot of business with Indian farmers, so I have a very nice network in India. It's a diplomatic position. It's a very nice opportunity to also see the government, see the other side of the table or other side of the fence, to work with large Finnish companies, to work with large Indian companies. Shall I apply? And my wife, she was pissed off to me, as she always is, and she told me, do whatever you want. And then I applied and I got the position, and then we thought that, hey, why don't we just move there for 4 years, and if I will be only 45, so I'm still quite young, so then it's possible for me to jump back to the corporate world. But of course it was difficult, and of course for my partners in crime, the persons that I have set up the companies with, it was difficult for them, but I have never done any career planning. I have been just kind of going along with the flow.
So I have a question. So you showed some slides indicating how easy it is to open companies in Finland.
Yeah.
How hard is it, how easy it is to close a company? Because startups tend to have a certain survival rate. So in Sri Lanka, it's actually hard to close a company.
Yeah, I know, and many other countries, as mentioned, I've been advising companies in Russia, and I've been sitting in the boards of a couple of large Russian pharma companies, and it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare in India as well. It's a nightmare to close companies. It's extremely easy. There's only one kind of company that you can set up, a limited company in Finland, which you can do online and set it up easily and close it as easily as well. It's most kind of transparent and open and easy society in the world. Very good question. And these are things that you need to think about when establishing company, how to close it as well.
One of the problems with startups in Sri Lanka is the tax and government. Rather than encouraging, they come behind the startup. And how friendly and how Finland has addressed that issue. Of course, it's legal aspects.
Taxation or
taxation,
okay.
Then various types of legal obligations, which is very much similar to a big company or a small company or a startup.
We have one corporate tax which is 20%, and that's it. In the European scale, our corporate tax is quite low. one of the areas where we have really succeeded in kind of utilizing digitalization in Finland is taxation. Everything is online, everything is transparent. Usually startups don't make money, so they don't have to pay taxes, but anyway, corporate tax is 20%. It's very, very open and transparent and easy.
What is the university's mechanisms there in Finland to have, say, startups within the universities or support for innovative projects and work while they are running their academic programs? So are they going in two parallel? So it's the same thing, education and innovation happening in the same stream.
Again, a very good question. In all the universities, there are large teams which are supporting startups, and the legislation nowadays in Finland is that if you do innovation in a university project, then the university has the ownership of the IP. But then if the university doesn't take it forward, then it goes back to the actual students or the faculty member who did the innovation. But there's a lot of support, and it always goes hand in hand.
Except for the startups, are there any other parts of AI strategy, like the role of the public and government issuing any services?
Yeah, so the question is that, is it regarding AI?
Yes.
So we have one single national AI strategy that covers all the aspects, which is online and in English. So you can go and see the Finnish national AI strategy. It covers all the aspects, you know, all the governmental functions, startups, etc. Yeah.
What would be the name to search for?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I can get back to you on that.
Send you email.
Yeah. Kumudu, any questions? No, not from me. No questions. Okay. Thank you for good questions. I can pass on my card to you if you want to stay in touch, and feel free to kind of don't send me email, because I hate emails and it's impossible to reach anybody with emails nowadays. Just WhatsApp me to my Indian number. So that's by far the easiest way to reach me, and then I can be confident that the Americans get all the information when you send me WhatsApp. Okay, thank you very much.
Innovation, startup, work, I think this information is really useful. So I think you guys